Danielle. It's been week 2 of the WNBA season, and here we are doing our second podcast. We're Scott and Danielle Winslow, a father and daughter from Indiana who love basketball and love talking about it and watching it and playing it. And so this is our second podcast, and we want to kind of look back at week 2 of the WNBA season. And there's kind of breaking news today that just came out about Caitlin Clark.
Yeah, it looks like she'll be out for at least 2 weeks with a leg injury. And I think it's the same leg. She missed a preseason game with a leg injury, so I'm not sure if it's the same issue and just hasn't gone away or what exactly. But yeah, that'll be um, big for Indiana.
Yeah, it's going to be big for Indiana. I mean, they've got a maybe an easy stretch coming up, so that might help, but we can talk about that a little bit later. But right now, why don't we start with just looking back at the week? They had a full week, three
Mhm.
games in 5 days, essentially with travel thrown in there as well. It wasn't like three home games in Indianapolis and they could just rest. So they had a game Tuesday at home, a game Thursday at Atlanta, then a game Saturday. So the first game, I'll be honest, was a surprise to me. I didn't think Atlanta was going to be all that good this year, not because they didn't have talent. I just thought it was a strange mix of talent.
Mhm.
Obviously, they've got some really talented players, and so yeah, I know I didn't get to see that game, but what were some of your thoughts about the
Yeah,
that game with the Fever lost?
it was not a great matchup for Indiana. The Atlanta construction still doesn't make complete sense with the system they're trying to play. Bree Jones and Brittany Griner are out there taking threes, which seems like what the defense would want them to do.
Right.
But they are a tough matchup because their two bigs are so big. It's really a load for the front court to handle, and then their guards are so quick and athletic. Indiana's weakness is kind of defensive guards. They don't really have great defensive guards, at least starting guards. So it's a tough matchup, and Bonner didn't have a great couple games against Atlanta. It's a tough matchup for her because she's way too petite to really guard Griner or
Mm,
Jones, and then those guards are pretty quick and little for her. So it wasn't a good matchup for Bonner.
yeah, I mean, like I said, I didn't see it, but looking through the box score, just a couple things stood out to me, and one was Caitlin Clark played 38 minutes, which feels like they're overusing her a little bit. They've got to figure out some offense apart from her and Boston setting pick and roll or dribble handoffs. It seems to be generating too much of their offense right now. And she ended up with 27 points, 11 assists, so she seemed like she had a solid game. Um, but one thing that stood out, there wasn't a huge discrepancy in rebounds or turnovers, but Atlanta shot 33s, but they still shot quite a few. They shot 32 free throws, and
Mhm.
Indiana only shot, I'd say 17 threes and shot 26 free throws. So usually, if a team's shooting almost twice as many threes as their opponent, they're not going to shoot more free throws than their opponent. So that's something that really stood out to me just looking at the box score.
Yeah, and Steph White even called that out in the New York Post game. She didn't even include the first of the three games of this week, and just the second game against Atlanta and the New York game. They were minus 31 from the line. Like they shot 31 fewer free throws, which is ridiculous. The refing has been really bad. And yeah, like you said, it's not like they're just checking threes all the time. They're getting to the lane. They're getting contact in the lane, and the refs just haven't been calling it. But they also haven't helped themselves out from the line at all. They shot terribly in that first game against Atlanta, and really pretty poorly in the second game against them also. Um, the other thing from that first game against Atlanta was Sophie Cunningham was out, and so that's tough. That hurts their depth and rotations, not
Yeah.
having her. Um, And they were down double digits with about 5 minutes to go, but you felt like they were still in the game and they could still win and they still had a chance. And they got that back within one possession and only ended up losing by 1 point. And Aaliyah has been really good. Was good in those games, and Lexi Hall was good in that game as well.
Yeah, Aaliyah played really well in that game. Yeah, I think 24 and 10 and 9 for 13 from the field. So,
Yeah,
yeah, she was very strong, even against going up against two bigs.
yeah,
Um, very strong. So, yeah, I think a lot of that, again, probably comes back to their defense, right? I mean, you score 90 points in 40 minutes, you should be able to win that game.
yeah.
And I think that just, so, yeah, I mean, probably the officiating and foul discrepancy issue is something that we hope to see change as the season goes on. But then their defense, I mean, they've got
Yeah.
to figure out something on the defensive end too.
And even with all of that, they had the ball on a sideline out of bounds play with 9 seconds to go at home against Atlanta and weren't able to score. And Caitlin didn't take the last shot. So there's they have not been helping themselves out in some of these games. Caitlin was inbounding the ball, and you think with 9 seconds left, there's plenty of time to get it back to her. But she made kind of a lob pass into Natasha Howard in the post, who took a really, really quick shot, missed, kind of got a rebound and threw something wild up and missed again, and that was the
Hmm.
game.
Well,
So
didn't
you'd
they
like,
have Caitlin inbound? I mean, I don't mean
yeah.
to skip ahead on Saturday, also against the Liberty when they were down and
Mm-hmm.
had the ball. I wonder
Yeah.
what, I'd love to hear Coach White talk about what the thought process
Well,
is.
she's obviously the best passer on the team, so you get that, but you want the ball in Caitlin's hands at the end.
Yeah, I mean, you want to just inbound the ball to her. I mean,
Yeah.
let's just stop with
Duana
the
Bonner, have
cuteness.
Duana inbound the ball. She's a vet.
Aaliyah
She's
Boston
tall.
could inbound it.
Yeah,
Aaliyah's a great passer. You and I have
yeah.
talked about that. You know, we feel like she's probably the second best passing big in the league behind Alyssa Thomas. And
And
they're,
she doesn't turn the ball over like Thomas does. Thomas has a lot
yeah.
more passing turnovers for sure.
So, yeah, interesting strategy. Can't say I like it. You
Mm-mm.
know, I want to get the ball into Caitlin Clark's hands, not have her inbounding the ball. Um, but yeah, so that was disappointing. I'm sure, you know, losing the home game wasn't expected. You know, I didn't expect it anyway. But
Right.
then the second game on Thursday at Atlanta, they came back and got a good win.
Yeah. And that a good win is a relative term. It's a win. It was an ugly game. It was fairly low scoring, but at midway through the fourth quarter, Atlanta had shot 19 free throws and Indiana had shot four. Um, the
Hmm.
refs evened it up a little bit down the stretch, but again, Indiana shot really poorly. They ended up 8 for 15 from the line, but the officiating was rough. It was just a very choppy game, and they were kind of lucky to get out of there with a win.
Yeah, maybe a lucky win is a better way to say it, but you know, it may be an important win. I mean, if they had
Yeah.
lost both games of the Fever
Oh,
this
yeah,
week, that would have been, I mean, to the Dreams, that would have been tough for the Fever.
for
So
sure.
it was an important win to steal one on the road after losing a tough game at home. But in that game, so was Caitlin Clark in foul trouble during that
Yeah,
game? I
she and
mean,
Aaliyah both got in foul trouble. They both had four relatively early in the second half.
okay, because she played 32 minutes in that game, which was the
Yeah.
least she's played, and only ended up with 11 points.
Hmm.
So, you know, thankfully Howard and Mitchell had good games
Yeah,
offensively. It
Howard was
looks like,
very good.
yeah. So they carried him, but you know, it leads me to the thought we've talked about a little bit is, you know, what's going on with Dewana Bonner? Like it's they haven't been getting her involved, or she isn't getting into a rhythm. I don't know, but have you had any thoughts after watching five
Well,
games?
I did think she played better against New York than against Atlanta. And like I said, Atlanta was just a bad matchup for her, I think. That doesn't really lend itself to any of her strength, and she matches up better against Stewie or Phoebish or someone, although Phoebish didn't get to play very much going out with an injury. But yeah, she was rebounding well against New York, and got a couple steals, and an assist to Lexi for a three off an inbound steal, against New York. But I don't know. If Duana does not get involved and isn't contributing on offense, I don't think they can win a championship this year. I think a championship ceiling is contingent on an effective Duana Bonner.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I would have to agree with that. I don't think that there's. strong enough to, they've got to figure out something on their offensive end, I think. I mean, I feel like they're still too dependent on Clark to create things for them, either
Hmm.
with her passing or with her shooting. And
Yeah, and you
it,
saw it in the New York game. It's their best offense is the Aaliyah and Caitlin pick and roll. It's
right.
really tough to defend, but you can't only do that.
No, you can't. I mean, it is tough to defend. It's a great option to go to. They can go to it at any time. It feels like they've really got to develop something, and Bonner's got to be a part of that. I mean, she's the third leading scorer in WNBA history, and I know she's, past the prime of her career, but still, she was scoring last year for the
Yeah.
Sun, and I don't think you're gonna have that big of a drop off where you go from averaging double figures to scoring 3 points a game or whatever she's scoring right now.
Yeah,
So
I think at least maybe starting the New York game, she had only scored 7 points or something like that this season.
yeah,
So
so I'd really like to for them to be able to figure out how to get her scoring 8 to 10 points a game, and Clark doing 20, Boston 20, Howard and Mitchell 15 to 20, and an occasional night either one of them can go for 25.
yeah, and then you have
But
Lexi and Sophie pitching in, and
yeah,
that's pretty tough to score to keep up with that level of scoring.
yeah. But even without Bonner scoring, I'm not sure scoring's been their big problem yet.
Uh, no, that's true.
And so that
Defense.
brings me to the New York game on Saturday, which I kept saying it looks like a layup drill for New York in that
Yeah.
first quarter, especially.
Yeah, I think John Quill got 5 layups in the first quarter.
Yeah. And I don't remember who the color commentator was, but she just kept saying another right-handed layup, another
Yeah.
right-handed layup, another right-handed layup. And they weren't even contested. I mean, Indiana's pick and roll defense was horrific in the first quarter.
Yep. I think they gave up 29 points, but they scored 31 or 32. Like I think they ended up outscoring New York in that first quarter, but you just can't give up easy buckets like that.
Yeah, I mean, New York wasn't even having to work
Yeah.
hard to get those. It wasn't like New York was working hard and struggling to score. It was just like easy bucket after easy bucket after easy bucket. And I felt like Indiana was they made some threes, I think,
Hmm.
towards the end of the first quarter to kind of get back. I think New York was up quite a bit, and
Hmm.
Indiana just got hot from three at the end of the first quarter and did take a lead right at toward the end of the first quarter. But I think New York ended up with 31 because of the foul at the end of the first quarter, which
Maybe so. Was it 31-33? Something like that.
33-31, something like
In
that.
at least 3 quarters with 2 seconds left, they put New York at the line,
Yeah.
which
And ended up losing the game by 2 points. I
hmm
mean,
in a game
it's
where they
really,
also missed multiple free throws, and they've lost 2 games so far by a total of 3 points, and
yeah.
they've been shooting probably below 70% from the line. So that's
But
gotta change.
it has to change. But those fouls, I don't remember the third quarter one, or was it the first and second quarter? I'm almost positive they were both on turnovers that resulted in,
I
I
think
think in the
so,
first
yeah.
quarter, Rebecca Gardner
Hmm.
was about to get a layup and Clark fouled her to stop her from getting a layup like with 1 second to go. But
Yep.
as a result of a turnover on a really bad pass.
Yeah.
And I think in the second quarter it was the same thing, if I recall correctly. Just a
Hmm.
bad turnover that led to New York, getting the ball and Indiana committing a foul. I mean, that was 4 points they gave away in a 2 point game. And
Yeah.
you mental mistake. They had possession of the ball. It would have been better to just hold. They would have won the game. Even those
Yeah.
two possessions, they would have just held the
Yeah, just
ball.
throw the ball up in the air and
Yeah.
don't give it up,
I mean, it was just the chances of them scoring in either of those situations was slim anyway, and it really came back to bite them that they gave up those 4 points, and you know, and those were fouls. I mean, I don't think those were not
No, there was at
any
the end of the
question.
game, there was a bad call. Lexi got called for a foul on UNESCO, and it looked pretty clean on the replay. But at that point, they were out of timeouts, and so they weren't able to challenge it. They just
That's
had the
right.
reset timeout, so they aren't able to challenge in that case. But even that, they had to burn a timeout maybe in the second or third quarter when Caitlin picked up her dribble and no one, like right by the sideline, and no one came to help her out, and they burned a timeout there. And so it's stuff like that that you hope they'll clean up as the season goes on.
Yeah. hopefully so. I mean, and their pick and roll defense.
Yeah, and
That was just
Steph White said in the post game that she probably needed to call. They got up 10 on New York in the fourth quarter, I think, early.
yes.
And then New York got back in, but Steph White said post game that she needed to call timeout earlier.
Oh, I said that while we were watching the game. It's like she waited until it became a 1 point game and called a timeout. It's like it's too late. You needed to
Yeah,
call the timeout, as soon as New York got a couple of buckets
yeah.
when you
And
had a
that's the
six
kind of
point
thing
lead or
that you
so.
expect kind of growing pains of a new team with a new coaching staff and a lot of new players. Steph White was coaching a much more veteran team in Connecticut last year, and that's something that maybe a older team can play through a little bit more. But they have a pretty young team, and um, yeah, that's the kind of thing where Steph White is learning the team, and the team is learning the system, and hopefully will improve with time.
Yeah. Well, before we get on to Caitlin Clark's injury and kind of the impact for the next couple of weeks, there were a couple of other games that I thought were really interesting this week and wanted to touch base on and talk a little bit about. And the first one was Friday night. Um, I didn't get to watch the whole game. Mom and I were watching a movie, then just switched on the Lynx game, and they were down pretty badly. I don't know. I remember how badly they were down, but
Maybe 18 points or something like that.
yeah. Well, when we switched it on, I don't remember. I think maybe they'd already started their run, but they were down 15 with 5 minutes to go in the game. It was 68 to 53, and then Minnesota went on a ridiculous 18 to 0 run to just pull out a miraculous victory against Connecticut.
Yeah. Connecticut had a lot of shooting struggles in that game. Williams was 0 for 11 and Bridget Carlton was 2 for 11. So, like, that's probably never going to happen again. But they just couldn't buy a bucket. Couldn't get anything from three. Kayla McBride is still out, so they don't quite have the floor spacing, or
Yeah.
Kayla can just kind of get a bucket when you need one. But yeah, Connecticut kind of fell apart and weren't able to get a score. Mabry chucked a couple of threes that were probably a little early in the shot clock and ill-advised.
Yeah. I mean, definitely. I think maybe it was hot in the first half from three. Um, Again, I didn't see the first half, but from what I read, and I think she tried to just keep shooting. And sometimes shooters do that, they just keep shooting, and they were probably ill-advised. I mean, it's hard to lose a 15-point lead in less than 5 minutes, but Connecticut managed to do it. So I mean, that's a real important win for Minnesota to be able to steal that.
Yeah.
And, right now it's looking like what I think we talked about last week on the podcast and have been talking about is we think Minnesota and New York are the two best teams in the league.
Yeah.
So it's looking like that. They're both undefeated. I think you look at it's, you know, sure, early in the season, small sample sizes, but I think they've got the probably the two biggest scoring margins right now.
hmm
So it's legit. We'll give it a few more weeks, but they seem to be the two best teams in the league.
Yeah, especially considering Minnesota doesn't even have McBride back. And
Right.
even in that game, Alana Smith was in and out. She had a hard fall or something like that, and what didn't play that whole game against I mean, she was in and out of that game, so she didn't play the minutes she would normally play. And then again, Williams and Carlton were terrible from the floor. So yeah, I think Minnesota probably is the number two team. New York does look like they're a little bit better than everyone this year.
Yeah,
Um,
they do.
but I
They
did
do.
notice that Minnesota's schedule is pretty unbalanced. It looks like the back half of their schedule is a lot more top teams. So they play New York three times in a row somehow in the second half of the season. They play, I think, 10 out of their last 19 games are against Vegas, Indiana, or New York. So the records may look early. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Minnesota ends up being the number one team for a significant portion of the season just by record. But we'll see
Right.
at the end. But New York and Minnesota probably are the top two.
I think so. I mean, they look like it, especially with the Nafisa playing like an MVP right now. She's been looking great, and obviously New York just I think they really getting Cloud in the starting lineup was an upgrade over um, Vandersloot,
Yeah.
and even though we love Vandersloot, she's just not quite the player that Cloud is right now. And then getting Johans back, and they
Hmm.
just look, they've got depth,
And
they've got
Jonquel is playing like MVP Jonquel. Like she
mm,
is locked in and looking good. Jonquel, like when she's locked in, she's a top five player in the country easily. For me, it just she sometimes is a little bit inconsistent.
yeah, she
But if
is.
she's going to be consistent, I don't know who can beat New York in a 7 game series.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're the best team, and if John Quill is playing like a top five player, you got Stewie playing like a top five player.
Yeah.
I mean, Ian Yescu's a top 10 player in the league, probably. I mean, there's
Yeah.
just, and we love Phoebish.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, she got hurt. Hopefully, she'll be fine and it won't be anything major. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, they've got size, they've got shooters, they've got defense. I mean,
Hmm.
they're a complete team, and I think the best team in the league right now.
Yeah, and arguably one of the better coach teams. There's a lot of new coaches in the league who we have yet to see how they're gonna do, but
Yeah,
New York, Vegas, Minnesota, and arguably Indiana probably have the four best coaching staffs in the league, and not surprisingly, four of the best teams as well.
yeah. Well, we think Vegas has the best coach in the league, but
Yeah,
wow, they got crushed by Seattle the other night.
yeah. It was not close at all. NECA is looking really, really good.
Hmm.
And Vegas basically is playing 4-on-5 out there on offense all the time because you don't have to guard Kia. Um, and Gabby Williams is shooting the three this year. That's kind of been the only knock on her
Boy.
game, really, is you don't have to respect her at the 3-point line, but she's shooting, I think, 50% on 4 attempts a game. So it's not like she's out there shooting one a game. Yeah, they look really, really good. I think based on the first 2 weeks, I would put Seattle above Vegas, and I think they're more likely to make the semifinals than Vegas right now.
Yeah, I agree. I think they look strong. Their rookie, what's her name? I
Yeah,
forget.
Malonga.
Malonga had a good game. May have been
Yeah,
in garbage minutes against the Aces, but got double figures. I mean, they're looking really good. I don't know about their coaching. I really don't think their coach is it Noel
yeah, Noelle
something?
Quinn.
Yeah, Noel Quinn. I'm
He
not
might be
really
more of a
impressed by her.
defensive coach. The offense leaves questions for sure.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it was, I don't know how much of it was against their starters. I did look, yes, Seattle had 102 points against Las Vegas, who we think has, three great defenders in their starting lineup. Kia's not she's a liability on the offensive end, let's be honest. I mean, we really like her game on the defensive end, though.
Yeah.
And then you got Jackie Young and you got Asia, uh,
Mm-hmm.
arguably two of the five best defenders in the league with
Mm-hmm.
Asia and Jackie. So you got a great defensive team that gave up 102 points.
Yeah, and it was
And
easy. Like it was layups, it was transition, it was like passing and cutting and getting it back. They assisted on a lot of their buckets. Yeah, Vegas looks slow out there.
yeah, so I'm wondering what was going on with them because I did look quickly back at their games last year. They didn't give up over 100 points all season last year.
Wow. Yeah,
So,
they mentioned in the broadcast that Vegas has won 12 of the last or they had won 12 of the last 13 against Seattle. So like they've dominated Seattle for the last few years. But yeah, they
yeah.
did not have it at all. They held Asia, I think, to 15, which is not easy to do.
No, no, it's
Um,
not.
and Jewel
Wow.
came out hot at the start, but yeah, they just didn't have an answer defensively.
Yeah, you can't give up 100 points
No.
and win a game. When you in a 40-minute game, that's a lot of points.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So yeah, those seem like kind of harbingers of those couple of games. Like Minnesota kind of stole a game. It's going to hope maybe help them down the road in seeding. And the Seattle Las Vegas game seems to maybe point to a different top four than maybe. I mean, we were kind of wondering if with Seattle Las Vegas who would be the
Hmm.
fourth team along with Minnesota, New York, and Indiana, who would be
Yeah.
the fourth out of those in some order. But
Right.
early season, it's looking like it's Seattle who's maybe fourth
Yeah.
and or in the top four. Maybe they could even be three ahead of Indiana, depending on how long
Yeah.
Caitlin Clark's out and if Indiana can get Bonner going or not.
Yeah, the one encouraging thing for Vegas in that Seattle game is once the game was over, Becky Hammon finally put Kitley in, who was at Virginia Tech, had
Yeah.
a season-ending injury before last season started. And I don't know if she's just been working, if she's on a minutes restriction or if this is, I don't know, but she hasn't really played so far this season, but she looked really good. And she came out and scored 6 points on six or three straight possessions and uh, she's probably not a huge drop off from Kia defensively. So
Hmm.
I think you've got to go with Kitley and give Asia a little help in the post on offense.
Yeah. Well, that'll be something very interesting to keep an eye on as the season goes on. See how many minutes Becky Hammons plays her.
Yeah,
Because yeah, you and I have talked about this. They got to do something with that position. They can't. They're not going to win a championship with
no,
Kia in the starting lineup.
nope,
The rest of the league has caught up with them. I mean, 3 years
yeah,
ago, their defense was so good that they were able to really win. And but now New York, you kind
yeah,
of stacked their team, and Indiana's really got a lot through free agency. Seattle's gotten better. I mean, and Las Vegas hasn't gotten better. I mean, I
right.
don't.
And it's interesting the trade to get Jewel and as Kelsey Plum was leaving, it's kind of hard to compare those two players because they have a little bit of a different style, but you could argue that Kelsey Plum is a more consistent player,
Mm,
whereas Jewel Lloyd can be pretty streaky and she can get hot and kind of scorch you, but there can also be more games probably than Plum where she kind of disappears and doesn't really impact the game.
mm,
Um, so without that consistent third or fourth scoring threat, it's going to be a tough road for Vegas.
yeah, I think so too. But they're so good defensively still. I think they're going to be, you know,
Yeah.
easily a playoff team and probably the fifth best team in the league at the moment. But
Yeah.
we'll have to,
Although we'll see when Copper gets back for Phoenix. I'm curious to see what they look like.
yeah,
And I don't know. It'll be interesting to see Atlanta against some of the other top competition in the league.
it will be. Yeah, I mean, Atlanta's in very strange mixture of talent still, I think. So it's going to be interesting to see how they how they do with that. All right, so now Caitlin Clark injured.
Yeah.
One thing
The
we talked
ESPN.
about was just
Oh,
how much she never got hurt. She, didn't miss a game at Iowa, I don't
yeah.
think.
No, yeah, ESPN put out an article and said that literally all 4 years at Iowa and all of last year as a rookie, and that was coming off of a full season her senior year playing every game possible in the Big Ten tournament and the NCAA tournament.
Right?
Never missed a game. Indestructible.
High minutes,
Yeah,
high
very
usage
high.
rate. Her senior year usage rate
Right.
was 40%.
Which, to be fair, maybe that's why the her coaches haven't made her play defense, because that's kind of where they buy her some rest. But maybe Indiana's making her play a little defense, and it's catching up. But yeah,
Yeah.
Indiana's been playing her too many minutes, but hopefully, obviously, she gets better quickly and can be healthy the rest of the season. But it's tough. The backup point guard is kind of their weakest backup position on the Fever. So it'll be interesting
Yeah.
to see how they handle it, if they just kind of do it by committee, because kind of all their players can handle the ball, or if Sydney Colson starts. I'm not sure how they'll handle that.
Mm. Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, it seems like they're going to have to start Colson. I don't. Lexi is a good secondary ball handler, but I don't think you want Lexi being a primary ball handler.
Yeah,
Mitchell's
or
not a
Mitchell.
primary ball handler. So it
Maybe
seems like,
Lexi. They did that a little bit in a preseason game, I think. They had Lexi kind of handling, not Lexi, Sophie Cunningham handling uh,
mm,
the point a little bit. But
I
yeah,
think any of those three can buy you a couple of minutes in a game, but like for 40 minutes, I just
yeah,
don't
for two
see.
weeks.
Yeah, for 2 weeks. I mean, that's just not a recipe for success. Colson's probably going to have to give them at least 20 minutes a game
Yeah,
just for ball handling purposes. And yeah, that's something I think you and I have talked about this. We don't think Colson's a great backup, but we'll see. She's going to have an opportunity to get a lot of minutes in the next 2 weeks at least. So, a couple of things. So, the schedule, looked at the schedule for the next 2 weeks, and this is at least 2 weeks she's going to be out. Well, you've got it over your as your backdrop there, but so it's at Washington, then Connecticut home. So, I mean, Washington's feisty, but they're not a great team, you know.
No, yeah, I think they've exceeded expectations early, but I don't even know why, because their best chance is to not do well and get a good draft pick and continue to
Yeah,
build their young core. They have a very promising young core, but Aaliyah Edwards been out, Shakira Austin's been out. Um, so I wouldn't expect, I expect that we could win at
yeah.
Washington.
I mean, that's a possible win. Connecticut, I mean, that should still be a win. I mean,
Yeah,
Indiana should be better than Connecticut, even with Caitlin out, and then get Washington again for a home game.
yeah,
So, I mean, it's a pretty good time to rest her, you
it
know.
is. And
Um,
even I think that then they play Chicago as well, right?
yeah,
And so
then
that works out
Chicago's the
kind of
would
the
be the
way
fourth game.
the drama of the last game. It's kind of nice that it works out for Caitlin to miss one of those Chicago games. The league scheduled them to play 5 times this year, and it seems like there's always extra drama when that happens. So it's kind of nice to sit that one out.
Yeah, that'll be very good. And Chicago's been the worst team in the league so far.
Yeah.
I mean, they played. If you look just at scoring margin, again, small sample size, but their scoring margin is the worst in the league at the moment.
I
And
think they've only played 3 games, including New York and Indiana, so that is a tough start, but they don't look good either, just watching them.
no, they've got nothing in their half court offense is not good. Um, Angel Reese is not great in the half court except offensive rebounds. She's great at rebounding. I mean, she's elite at rebounding, but yeah, their half court offense is not great right now. And so that could, I mean, they could,
They could
even
go
without
4 and
Caitlin,
0.
they could get through this stretch 4-0, and that would be huge for them if they could rest her and get through at least 3-1. I mean, that it seems like they should at least go 3-1 in this stretch to me. So that's going
Yeah.
to be something to keep an eye on.
Really, I would be surprised if they drop any of those games, but it'll be interesting to see how they handle the point position without her.
That'll be key. And, Colson, in the few minutes remember seeing her in I don't remember if it was the Chicago game. She was a little pesky defender when she did get in there of the preseason game against Brazil. I don't remember which game it was, but I mean, maybe she can create something on defense and help them out there and just distribute the ball. Maybe that'll get Bonner going. If you have somebody who's a point guard who's not looking to shoot as much as Caitlin does, maybe they can get Bonner going. But yeah, I think that'll be really key for them to get to 4-0 over the next 2 weeks or 3-1 is how's Colson play or whoever, how that point guard position.
Yeah, for sure. It'll be interesting. But yeah, it is a pretty favorable schedule for the timing.
It is. All right. Well, any other thoughts as we think about this week 2 and looking ahead to week 3 of the WNBA?
Um, just Dallas is pretty bad. I mean, I think we expected that they would be bad, but they've had a pretty rough start, and Paige isn't shooting efficiently like we're used to seeing her. But um, yeah, the front court is just a struggle. I watched them play Seattle, and it was a fairly close game. Um, but at the end, they benched Smith and Carrington, and even Enrique for a good part of the fourth. And we're doing better with Ty Harris and Maddie Siegrist and McCowan. And interestingly, so
Hmm.
it's kind of they have Paige, and then kind of 6 or 7 players who would be ideal coming off the bench.
Yeah.
So it's kind of figuring out their rotations and what's going to work. But um,
Well, an early season, and maybe I wasn't being fair to Chicago saying they're the worst team in the league. Dallas might be the worst team in the league.
yeah,
And especially if Enrique keeps going, that's an early season development. It's going to be interesting to see. She's been really bad on offense
yeah,
and not shooting well. And is it just a slump to start the season? It's possible. Enrique is also a streaky scorer.
yeah,
Even in a game, she can go a first half and have only 2 points and then just blow up in the third quarter. And she's a very streaky scorer, not consistent, but really dangerous. So you and I have talked about we'd love to see her on a team where she could be the sixth player off the bench instead of having to be a starter, because I think that's her ideal role to be on a good
Yeah.
team, come in as a microwave offensive player, not good enough to be the best player on a championship team or even
No.
a winning team. I don't think the WNBA is
No.
too good right now. There's been an influx of talent
Yeah. I
in
don't
the
think
past
they've had
five
a
to six
winning
years.
season since she's been at Dallas. So
No,
I
she's
think
she's not
that's,
good enough to be the best player on a winning team. And, she needs to, it would be fun to see her get on a good team and be a player coming off the bench and be instant offense. I mean, to me, that's like a dream scenario for Enrique. She could be great at that role.
yeah.
And
Like Arike in Seattle would be fun.
mm,
Yeah.
yeah. So, all right. Well, we will keep an eye on Caitlin Clark. Hope that she gets better soon. And the Fever have, what, I guess a game Wednesday and Friday this week. So just two. That's good. They don't have three this week. So yeah. So make sure we'll try to be able to watch those games and look forward to talking next Sunday. We're a day behind this week because of the holiday weekend and some family travel, but probably try to do the podcast next Sunday and get it up. All right. Well, thanks everybody and look forward to next week.